of prominence. But what we need to focus on, and you had asked him, but he has not told us, is that there is an actual constitutional amendment bill that has been proposed. I would really like to hear the thinking behind it, because we in the Senate consider it. I think the proposal was made. First of all, I read a lot of contempt, not just in the fact that the members of parliament who sponsored that bill did not even bother to have a conversation with the Senate to understand what are our needs. And then secondly, by the actual allocation, that amount, I think it was just supposed to prick our conscience. So that I think they were looking for a reaction from us senators. No. But we treated it with the contempt that we treat this statement from the member of parliament from Fafi. Because, Trevor, you cannot tell me that you are going to allocate an oversight fund. If you want to give something, just give it, Mheshimiwa Osoro. And what we want to encourage you as a leader, you are a young person, in order for us to strengthen these institutions, because one of these fine days, you will find yourself as a senator. In order to strengthen this institution of parliament and to build that collegiality, whenever there is a matter that affects both houses, please, let us originate these ideas together. Let us sit down. I explained to you, I have 17 constituencies in Nairobi. You have one constituency. I think the population of the registered voters in your constituency is like one ward here. It's the truth. It's the truth. Oh, if you are allocating yourself, let us have that conversation with Osoro. I can convince you that, in fact, that 0.001 that you put is very contemptuous on the people of Nairobi, the people that I represent. So we can sit down and draw a formula. We are not greedy. We are not interested. This is not money that is coming to Sifuna's pocket. I should be able, like yesterday, your cabinet secretary invited me for ICT, invited me for a launch of a public Wi-Fi hotspot at City Market. I went there in my capacity as an opposition leader to see that this Wi-Fi actually works, because previously, you people have launched Wi-Fi. You people have launched Wi-Fi in certain places I don't want to mention. And then it turned out that it didn't even work. So I went there in part of my oversight role. I was happy that the Wi-Fi was working. I even told the CS that immediately it is shut off, the traders at City Market will call me. But that escapade, just leaving Parliament to go to City Market, Osoro, you know it cost me money. You know it.
It is true.
Yeah. So please allow us to be able to meet these people, to listen to them, to see that actual development that is claimed to be happening to happen.
So what is your main bone of contention? My
main bone of contention is actually the lack of involvement. No, it's not even the allocation.
Yeah.
It's a lack of involvement. If there is a matter that involves both houses, Osoro, yeah, please let us, even the Constitution anticipates that certain matters, there should be some level of consultation between the leadership of the two houses, the speakers, so that we bring a bill that can be owned by both houses. Because this amendment will require the support of the Senate. And you know it. We are in support of CDF. I personally have seen the benefits of CDF. You will not get any resistance from me. But what we are saying is, if we are going to do things like this that affect both houses, please let there be some level of consultation and collegiality. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Osoro, I'll allow you to respond to that, then bring in Kagusha.
Okay. You know, there is an unnecessary inferior feeling from the Senate, which has happened over time. And it didn't start with the regime of Honorable Sifuna's, Senate. It started in 2013. And this is also normal because we are still within, there are only, I think this is the fourth Senate, is it the fourth or the third? I think it's the fourth Senate. Unlike the 13th Parliament, which of course has built structures over time. And the Senate is only 4 terms old. Let me say this. The stage that we are at in this whole thing about constitutional review in regard to the NGCDF is not the stage that does not open up for discussion. Because, of course, whenever you want to review the Constitution on such matters, you collect signatures from the members of Parliament first and meet a certain threshold, which was done, then introduce it in the National Assembly, which is the stage that we are in. It hasn't even gone for discussion. It hasn't even gone to the committee stage, because that was a private member's suggestion.
Yeah.
Honorable Gishimu and it's Honorable Gishimu and Honorable Kagusha, I think, but it's led by Gishimu. It is their bill. It is their proposal. Yeah. We have not even given our views. I mean, The only thing we saw in the whole thing is that, okay, fine, we need to review NGCDF. Even from the position I sit from, the government position hasn't given their views in regard to the increase of the NGCDF from 2.5 to 5%. So from where I sit, I mean, these guys, the Senate, possibly, you know, they're already complaining unnecessarily at a very early stage when we are in the process of inviting the members of the National Assembly so that the bill gets to the National Assembly and starts now the normal procedures. But having said that, I want to guide Honorable Sifuna on one or two things. Number one, NGCDF is autonomous. It's not a preserve of members of parliament. It is not directly controlled by the members of parliament. It is something that is completely autonomous. That is why it's National Government Constitutional Development Fund. Now, currently, we get 2.5 of the national cake allocated to the NGCDF, which is roughly about 136 million. Then that 136 million broken down, it's around, I think, 103 million, sorry. When it's broken, the latest we got about 103. When now you break down to a certain vote, in the 103 million, the 20% goes to, between 20 and 30% goes to bursaries. Then there is another percentage that goes to sports. Another percentage goes to security. And then there is security possibly takes about, I think, 2% or 1% thereabout. And then there is oversight fund for the 100 million, which we now oversight because it's autonomous, which is only 1% of 100 million.
Yeah.
This is what we use to oversight that amount. When you work it out, 1%, it's about 1 million. To oversight 100 million. That means we move around, we want to see what happens in terms of building classes, that development and stuff like that. So the oversight we take as members of parliament is 1% of that amount. Now, we are telling, and that is the thinking, I'm trying to imagine the thinking of Honorable Gishimo.
Yeah.
Then we are telling Honorable Sifuna. Now, I want us to go back now to the allocation of the funds the counties get. Nairobi County gets the lion's share of the national cake. Of course, going by their size. But let me use my county.
Yeah.
My county gets about 12 billion per year from the national, coffers. It gets 12 billion for development, for overheads, and all these other things that happen to the county. Now, we are telling Sifuna, because as he is right now, he oversights the county government without a certain budget. So he has to use his salary, to move around, like he said, to move around Nairobi County, so that, of course, he wants to see whether the markets have been done and stuff like that. We are telling him, we want to give you 0.01%, I think. 0.001% of 12 billion, for example, Kisii. It is not even equivalent to the 1 million that I used to oversight. It will get too much. And when it is true, we are telling him we give him 0.00. So the discussion we should be having in terms of involvement, it should be, we need to sit down. We are inviting him. At the stage where the committee will sit down, come and make a presentation and say 0.001 is insufficient with my number of counties. I need to make it, can we make it 0.1? Which is not possible because we also need to be very practical. What do you use to oversight? Possibly it should be 0.01. Yeah. If we have to review, it should be at a pro rata rate of about 10% or something. But not, it's something that we are starting. It must be be gradual. It's not something that you do once and finish. So my point is, we are talking about oversight fund. Okay. My oversight fund is 1 million. His oversight fund, if he has 17 constituencies, then should be 17 million. So work it out with the amount he receives. Is it commensurate to 0.001 of the county allocation fund? Okay. Can it get to 17 million? If it gets to 17 or 20 million, then it's sufficient to his
maybe out Kagusha things, then I come to Kagusha. What are your thoughts on this? On the legalizing CDF part, first of all, increasing it from 2.5% to 5%, will that be sufficient? And then the Senate issue.
Let me start by the Senate issue. Yeah. The issue that Senator has raised is important because at the end of the day, you say there's nothing for us without us. Yeah. And so the Senate need to be involved. And I think our whip has clearly put it that indeed, probably it's early. And the senator shouldn't feel that they have been put off.
So Sifuna is jumping the gun?
Well, I don't want to say that he's jumping the gun. I think he's just anticipating.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that at this point in time, even us as members of National Assembly, we are at the preliminary stages where we are actually doing something more or less like public participation. We're also giving our thinking, we're also giving our input. And so because this bill is originating from National Assembly and we are at the point of giving our thoughts, like Senator Sifuna is putting it, or they would want to do. So I think it's okay to wait and then wait until the time they get that opportunity then to raise their issues and at some point maybe even approach the drafters of this bill, because I can see this bill has been originated by one member from Kenya Kwanza and another one from Azimio. So it's important to sit with them, even at this point in time, and give them their thoughts so that they can be brought on board. Having said that, I would also want to point out that this issue of oversight, Kitty, has not been there. It's a new idea, actually. We have the 0.001% that Honorable Sifuna is talking about, and the 1% of what is already allocated to the CDFs as oversight, Kitty, for members of parliament. This is a new idea. Even that 1% of CDF oversight has not been there. At some point, the idea was mooted back in 2016, but there's no allocation that was put there. And at that point in time is also when the NGCDF came about, and it kind of separated this fund from being run by the Member of Parliament and put in place a committee, and then Member of Parliament is supposed to be in the oversight of this kitty. Yeah. Now, what I would actually be looking at myself as we are doing this, as we are putting this law into the Constitution, which I support, and I want to support also the increase of this amount from 2.5% to 5%, so that we can have more meaningful resources going to people on the grassroots. Yeah. In fact, this was the first devolved fund that ever happened in Kenya through the national government. I don't mind it having being given a bigger share, so that we are able to educate more kids. We are able to pay bursary for those people who get to be admitted to national schools, the bright, needy children. Now, the other thing I would also be looking at from where I sit, or from where I stand, is we need to increase, or we need to change the mandate of the CDF. At this point in time, we have the mandate of CDF being security and education. And if you look at some of the constituencies, giving an example like Kiharu constituency led by Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, you find that they have been able to work on their schools, and I think they have kind of completed, renovating almost all their schools. Almost all their schools are tiled. They have nice windows, they have nice toilets. Now they're actually doing landscaping for their schools. Now they look like academies. Now, I mean, they have also done quite a bit in terms of security, building offices for chiefs and sub-chiefs and police posts. Then what else do you want Honorable Ndindi Nyoro to do with his money? If at all you're not going to expand the mandate of the CDF from the two areas of security and education. So I think we need to increase it. Okay. At some point, I was a chair of CDF, and there are some projects that we initiated that had to do with small irrigation projects, which I think, looking at the issue of food security today in the country, we need to allow the CDF to be able to handle those, so that we can start and initiate projects. Yeah. We can even help to come up with designs and surveys that are very expensive for the people at the local level to develop. Okay. And once we have been able to do that, then the National Irrigation Board can come and pick up those irrigation schemes, and maybe the county governments. Yeah. But to initiate and even to do and implement some of those small irrigation projects should be allowed by the CDF. There's one particular irrigation project that was started by CDF in my locality, in my village, called the Hasagana irrigation scheme. And I remember the allocation that was done to that project was about 3 million at that time. Yeah. And then we had IFAD, which came on board and gave another 7 million. And now lately, again, we have had another donor, organization which has given 35 million. And now that irrigation project has actually peaked. And people are now farming sweet potatoes and many other things.
Okay.
So we should be able to expand the mandate
CDF.
of CDF.
All right. Yeah. Sifuna, I'll give you final say on this. Before
Trevor, you know, my brother knows I support CDF, but he should also not patronize me by trying to tell us how independent CDF is. Because you will see in South Mugirango, when those checks are being issued for bursaries, you will see Osoro smiling there in the cameras saying, hey, amepatia watoto bursary. When they build a classroom in the schools, you can hardly read the name of the school, but you will be very, very clear on who the patron is. The name of the patron is written in bigger and bolder letters than even the name of the school. Whether they do a street lighting project or build a fence around a police station, the name of the patron is the most clear thing. But we are saying, Osoro, we understand that given what the CDF is doing, you probably need a higher allocation. Some of us are beneficiaries of these bursaries. We have seen the importance of CDF. We have seen school infrastructure being improved. And you go to places like Westlands, our Member of Parliament, Tim Wanyonyi, has done a fantastic job when it comes to schools. So we are not arguing whether, you know, you deserve it or you don't. What we are saying is, when you're introducing a constitutional amendment bill, especially if you're going to go through a parliamentary initiative, Article 256 says that that bill can only pass if it is passed by both houses, and it actually requires that there are two-thirds majority. Two-thirds of all members of both houses have to pass it. So if you bring a bill and you can see that there is a component involving the other house, and you know that that house has to vote on this bill anyway, the proper practice, in my view, I'm not saying that you cannot introduce a bill there, but I'm just saying that if this bill is going to have to pass through both houses, and it actually affects both houses, it is only good for us to have that consultation. And I'll give you some perspective, Trevor. You know, like now this figure of 0.001%, if you ask Osoro empirically, you know, how did you come up with that figure? You will not be able to tell me. And for perspective, I am a leader of a political party. I've been SG of ODM. This is my 5th year. The political party's fund is 0.3%. Political party's fund. When you come to the one that you have proposed for the NGAF, or the women reps, it's 0.25%. So what is the rationale of placing 0.001 as an oversight fund?
The volume.
Let's just go systematically. The volume.
The amount allocated to the county coffers is too huge.
But this is the problem.
Something.
This is the problem, Osoro. This 0.01 is not calculated based on the amount of money that is allocated to each county. No. It is a charge on all the revenue of the country, that has already been put together, then it is distributed amongst all the 47 senators.
Now that is
if I had well,
in the bill,
if I had well,
just a minute.
Let him finish. Let's him finish.
In the bill itself, I have read the bill, Osoro. The bill says it will be 0.01 of the national revenue, you know? So it is not that if you make it 0.01 of each allocation, the allocation of each county, probably me as Senator of Nairobi will be getting way more money than my counterpart from Nyamira or Kisii, for instance. But this is the conversation we should have before the bill is brought. And I am happy you have confirmed that this bill is just like the other one for the member of FAFI, that it has not been processed through the ruling party. It has not even been thought about by the leadership of the party or even the president himself, who promised this. You know, the promise on the oversight fund was made by the president himself. So when the bill was brought by a member of his party, it was not a long shot for us to assume that this is what the president was talking about. So all we need, Osoro, please, let us have a conversation. Let us have a conversation because, you know,
we will allow you guys to have a conversation.
Indeed,
there's something I really hear your quick on, because we're running out of time, and this is something that has actually already been tabled in Parliament. Big names in race for Yala slots. After failing to get key positions in government, President William Ruto's allies and Raila Odinga's cronies are taking out the slots in the regional parliament. But with only 9 seats to share, who will have the last laugh? And I start with you, Kagushi, on this. Is this just a ploy also to reward the high and mighty, so to speak, or cronies like the Standard is calling it?
Well, I wanted to point out that the issue of the CDF, from what...
you will discuss.
As I come to that...
This one is already here.
Yeah, I don't know, just as Honorable Sifuna had actually said, his problem, he said, is not really the percentages. It's much more about involvement.
Yes.
And actually, I wanted to say that Kenyans may not understand those figures we are placing here. And so I think we'll have an opportunity to have that involvement. And that reassurance has been given.
Yeah.
And in fact, even one member of Azimio is also moving that bill or that motion for now. So the members of parliament, rather people who have applied to go to IALA, and as we can see the big names, I think these are political positions. These are members of parliament who are going to be representing this country in an extremely important assembly, which maybe we may not have taken so seriously in the past. That is IALA. And IALA is very important to us as a country, because then we are supposed to use it to advance our trade and business interests across the East African countries. And we are supposed to ensure that the laws that are made there are not in any way tilted against Kenya.
Yeah.
We are supposed to ensure that we still remain ahead of the others. We are supposed to ensure that we are exporting much more to the neighboring countries, and that the balance of trade and the tariffs are well addressed in this case. So we are looking at politicians and people who have the capacity to help Kenya as a country to push its agenda in the region. And so you do not expect that people who are going to be sent to IALA then are going to be either technocrats or bishops or doctors or business people per se. They are generally going to be well-seasoned politicians who have also these other... I mean, they could be any other thing. They could be businessmen, they could be bishops, they could be doctors, but they are well-seasoned politicians.
Okay.
This needs senior politicians. In fact, it doesn't need people who are going to start off as politicians in IALA. It requires someone who has done legislation in Kenya, and then when they are in IALA, they are able to represent this country, and they understand very well what is necessary, what is expected, and as a country, what we need.
Okay.
Because if you look at what is happening at this time, we seem to be losing the grip on balance of trade in East Africa. In the past, we have seen a very harsh treatment from one of our neighboring countries,
yeah,
where we have seen people being denied the permits, the work permits.
Yeah.
We have seen where people have been denied business opportunities in a certain country.